Okay, in this module, we're going to just do a little practice for the entering data. It's pretty straightforward, but there's a couple things that are good to know as you get into Excel and start to type things. So we're going to enter some text, use the delete key, set column widths, set row heights, do wrap text, and then look at how we enter numbers and formulas. And finally, we're going to use a little bit of copying and pasting to enter a big table and see how that can be helpful as we're making our spreadsheets. All right, so let's get started here. And the way I want this to work is we've got some text over here on the left side, and I want you guys to enter everything over here in column I underneath this cell that says enter data here. So the first thing we have here just says type data in the cell you want to type data into. So I will click on the cell I want to type data into, and I'm just going to type exactly what's there. So I'll say and then I hit enter, and that's it. Pretty straightforward. Let's do the next one, and I'll show you one little subtlety there. And this sentence is actually pretty interesting because it has, it's one of those sentences that has every letter in the alphabet. Okay, now notice what happened. The first time when we typed in our text, it was too big to fit in that cell, but it just spilled over into the next cell and even to the one after that. So in Excel, if you don't have anything in the cell to the right, Excel will just let the text keep flowing to the next cells. But if there's something in the next cell, then the text gets cut off. Look at that. We typed the whole thing. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy gray dog, but only the quick brown showed up. So when I click back on that, that's all it shows. Now we talked about this in an earlier module, but look at that formula bar. The formula bar shows that indeed everything we typed is in that cell. We just can't see the whole thing right now. Okay? And that's because there's text that was already there in the cell next to it. So let's look at a couple of ways to fix that. The first thing we're going to do is just resize the column width. Okay, so I will go up here. I'm going to put my cursor between I and J, and you'll see it'll change to another sizing icon. Once it does that, I can click on it, and I can drag it to the right to make it bigger, or drag it to the left to make it smaller. Okay, so I can make it big enough so all the text fits there, and then the other text is able to be shown too, and exactly the way it was. So let me make this small again, and I'll show you one other trick. Now, a really good trick in resizing columns is that, I can click on here and drag it, but if I get my cursor in between those columns and double click, Excel will look at that entire column and find the widest entry and auto fit that column to the widest entry in that column. So that can be pretty useful. Okay, row height kind of works the same way. We won't do a lot of demo on that right now, but if you go over here, you see how I can get the cursor between two rows and make it bigger or make it smaller. If you double click, it will resize, but everything's just in one row right now, so we won't see any difference there. Now, the next thing I want to do is show you how to wrap text. So I'm going to shrink this column up again, because here's another way to deal with too much text that's sitting in a cell. Maybe we want to see it all, but making this really wide will make the spreadsheet just not look right. So we've got to keep this column this size. What we can do up here underneath the home ribbon, we've got a command called wrap text. And what that does, if I click it, is it's going to take that column width, but it's going to let that cell wrap text over into multiple rows, and it'll make our row bigger too. You see how row 12 is now large enough to accommodate 3 rows of text. So wrap text is another thing you can do to show more text in a cell without making the column bigger. And if I take the wrap text off, then it just goes back to the way it was. Okay? The one thing I really want to leave you guys with is no matter what you can see on the screen, the data is still in the spreadsheet. It's still in Excel. And you can always tell that by looking back up at your formula bar. Okay, so that's text. Let's go down and enter some numbers. First two are pretty straightforward. We're just going to type 5, and then we'll type 10 and hit enter. And then what if we want to add two numbers like 5 plus 10? Let me just type that in here, 5 plus 10, and nothing happened. So you can enter numbers the same way you enter text in Excel, but if you want to do some math, if you want to do a formula, you have to either start your formula with an equal sign or a plus sign. So if I do equals 5 plus 10, then that worked out and did my math for me. I can also do plus 5 plus 10. And same thing. Most people use equals, but plus is still kind of something you can use to put a formula in there. Now I want to show you one thing real quick before we do another formula. Let's hit the delete key on this and get rid of this 15. So I've got a 15 over here, but I want to show you something. When I click on that, it shows 15 on the cell, but look at our formula bar. Equals C15 plus C16. And I'm going to double click it. That'll let me get into edit mode. And Excel actually color codes and shows you what it's adding up, and that's pretty neat. So let's go ahead and do that same formula over to the right there. So what we're going to do there is just type in equals, and then I can either type in I-15 or watch this. I can just click on it and it fills in that cell's address for me. Then I'll hit plus and I'll click on the 10 and it filled in I-16. And now I can hit enter, and Excel has made a formula that adds up these two cells. And that's pretty neat because I don't have to ever re-enter that formula again. If I want to change a value up here to make it 8, the formula automatically recalculates to what it is. So now you're going to start to get a little taste of why Excel is so useful at work, because you can kind of set up these models or set up these formulas. Then all you have to do is change, one little value and everything updates how you wanted it to. Okay, before we move on to the last part, the tables, I want to talk about the delete key on your keyboard. It's pretty self-explanatory, but that delete key, if you're on a cell, that's how you clear that cell out. So if I want to clear this formula, I'll hit that. If I want to clear these numbers, I hit that. If I'm actually entering a cell, I can also use the delete key to just delete individual characters in my text that I'm typing. And I've messed that up. Okay, so another key I'll show you is the escape key. I had the cell how I wanted it before I started showing you the delete key, and now I've kind of messed it up and I don't want to have those changes take effect, so I can hit my escape key. It'll go back to what it was before I started editing that cell. And now for the last thing we're going to do in this module is we're going to recreate this table down here at the bottom, and we're going to do a couple shortcuts to do that. Okay, so let's start off over here, and I'm just going to start off by typing location, and then I'm going to type Brooklyn, and then instead of typing Brooklyn 8 times, I'm going to copy and paste it. So now I can right click that and I can go up to copy, and then Excel will save that. Now I want to copy it. Then I can highlight all the cells I want to paste it to and right click and do paste. I just copied Brooklyn down. So let's do that for the rest of the table, and then we're going to build a revenue formula, and that'll be pretty interesting. So now I'm just going to highlight, instead of just highlighting Brooklyn, I'm going to highlight the rest of this table, and I'm going to right click and go to copy. And then I'm going to go right next to location. Now I don't have to highlight the exact same shape as long as the cells are free. So I can just click on the upper left cell where I want that group pasted to, right click on it and hit paste, and it will overwrite everything. And the last column that I want to put is revenue. Okay, now for revenue, what we're going to do is we're going to have cost per item times items sold. Pretty simple. So we'll just go here and we'll do equals that cell, cost per item, times, which is the asterisk key, and then 52. And it's 156. Now look at this formula really quick. It's K24 times L24. Okay? We're going to copy that and paste it down. Copy. And then I'll highlight the rest of the cells where I want that formula, and I'll go to my paste. And it worked. Look at that. We've got 12 times 25 is 300. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 88 is 8. 10 times 5 is 50. It's exactly right. But I want you to see something. In this next formula down that I pasted, the formula is K25 times L25. And in the next one down, it's K26 times L26. So when we copied text, it copied exactly what was in there. But here, what Excel did is Excel figured out that, hey, my first formula is on row 24, but I'm copying a formula. So don't you think whoever's copying this formula wants it to do the formula on whatever row it's on? So every time I pasted this formula down, Excel changed what row the formula was looking at. It's really cool. That is a technique. It's called relative referencing, and that's how we're going to be working with formulas and copying and pasting formulas 90% of the time. There's a time when we don't want to do that, and that's much further in the course. But I just wanted you to notice that because it does paste something different, but it actually does exactly what we want it to. We want it to be relative to whatever row we're on. All right, well, that wraps up entering data, and time to move on to the next module.